so I'm going to be trying this Hearts of Iron 4 Cuz Redo campaign. My goal is to end up going as New England, but we had to start as Canada to get them. So I'm looking at what I need to do. The British exiles are prominently placed within the Kingdom of Canada. Once a year, King George V has the ability to give them direction regarding where they should commit their efforts in supporting him. We'll direct the British exiles to either increase their own influence, increase the king's popularity, increase the country's political power and stability, or build an off-site factory. Each either lasts for a year or requires a year to take effect. In all cases, but the British exiles increasing their own influence, the level of their influence is expended. Okay, I guess we'll do that, because it's free. But I've already set the national... Or no, I didn't set the national focus yet, but I set my research already. The exiles have currently taken up prominent places within both the Canadian government and within the corporate sector, and they stand ready to support King George over the next year by whatever means he feels necessary. Let's say they'll support the... I don't know. Yeah, no, let's just go with what they should assist. No, let them work on increasing their influence, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, let's go look at what I'm going to do with national focus here, because I haven't decided. It doesn't really matter what I choose, because it's not really going to affect me that much after I choose to go as New England. So I was going to select a national focus, but it wouldn't let me until King Edward VIII was a king, so I'm just going to read about King George V in the meantime. The King Emperor, as he styles himself still, has reigned over the British Empire for 26 years. He ascended in 1910 to the throne at the height of his empire's glory, an empire in which the sun never set, but his reign oversaw the rapid decline of Britain's power, the loss of the Weltkrieg to his own cousin, the loss of his youngest son, John, and the final devastating loss of Britain itself have combined to break much of George V's spirit. His health also has worsened since the flight to Canada, which George proudly refers to as a frozen prison. He has lost any interest in participating in domestic affairs, delegating such ceremonial duties as he made to his son, Prince Edward. He now lives on only for the return to Britain, but this prospect grows dimmer by the day. So, in this timeline, Britain became syndicalist, I think. Whatever they are, they're called the Commune of Britain now, so the king and them went to Canada, so that's where they are now. I don't know if you can retake them as Canada, but I'm pretty sure that's their goal and their national focuses. I'm going to try to show Britain here. It's not letting me zoom out. Anyway. Oh no, there it is. Union of Britain. I thought it was Commune. But this game also has the I forget what he's called. Or what his title is. Prime Minister, I think. Either way, though, it doesn't tell you anything about him this time. Like, it doesn't have any information in his bio. It only did for King George V. But our Prime Minister is William Lyon Mackenzie King, and I don't know anything about him to add historical context. The current situation. It has been 10 years since the collapse of the United Kingdom in 1926, and in that time, the King, the remnants of the British government, and over 1 million of the Empire's best and brightest and wealthiest have fled to Canada, with the clear exception that an invasion would soon be launched to take back the home isles from the syndicalist upstarts. It quickly became evident, however, that the syndicalist position was stronger than anticipated. Early forays were rebuked, and the last decade has seen the Union of Britain become solidified and entrenched. The exiles, as they're called in Canada, have meanwhile been left adrift, determined to take back their homeland, but facing the political reality that this may never happen. One day soon, though. The current situation. While initially welcomed with open arms by Canadians, the notion this might be a long-term arrangement has been an increasingly unpleasant one. Fingers were pointed and blame laid on those who were deemed responsible for the collapse and the subsequent inability to rectify matters, and the resentment against exiles who were seen as a higher class in Dominion as well as above the law has been growing. In 1931, a year after their election, the minority government of R.B. Bennett and his Conservatives collapsed to be replaced by Mackenzie King and the Liberals with a promise to focus on Canadian sovereignty and keeping the British government in exile at arm's length rather than acting as if nothing had changed in the relationship. Only to be expected. This year, Mackenzie King and the Liberals are nearing the end of their term, and on top of the tribulations of the Great Depression, there is growing criticism that little progress has been made in resolving the political situation. George V lies on his deathbed, charging the exiles and the Conservatives with bringing the Empire back on track. His government clashes often with the Liberals, and the Canadian public appears split between those who would see matters come to a head and those who would prefer to abandon their ties to the Crown and the French exiles in Africa both. The upcoming election appears as if it will be the most divisive in Canadian history. Goodness, it says "Let's go Canada" in the picture. I'm also going to read about our focuses. We have Anglo-French tensions. Most of Canadians' French population is located in the eastern province of Quebec, and the traditional distrust between the Quebecois and English Canadians has heated up with the recent talk of pushing the country towards war. Of all Canadians, the Quebecois are the most ardently opposed to conscription, and the idea of wasting their lives in a faraway war for a sovereign they feel isn't their own. The Great Depression. While Canada has been far quicker to recover from the Depression than their American cousins to the south, their economy is in many ways tied to southern trade, and thus they will never be fully recovered until the Americans are. Still, things have been rapidly improving, and economists say a complete recovery is just around the corner. Observer rights in the Legation Council. When the British Empire collapsed in 1925, the then governor of Hong Kong invited troops from Germany and other great powers with presences in China to occupy the British concessions to protect them from the Chinese. This sparked a covert conflict between Americans, Japanese, Germans, which was finally ended by America in 1928 when the legation cities, officially known as the International Mandate for the Chinese Concessions, were formed. As is the case throughout the world, though Germany makes use of our imperial possessions, we still theoretically maintain ownership of them. It is in China where our extensive concessions guarantee us a seat on the Legation Council. By that same coin, however, the German refusal to recognize the government in Ottawa as a responsible British government denies us a vote in Shanghai. As a guarantor of British interests in the Far East, Canberra is generally responsible for the active maintenance of the Chinese concessions, and our disengagement allows us to focus on regaining George V's throne. Should Australasia fall into instability, however, we would be obligated to take their place in the cities. We deserve a voice in Shanghai. Political power +5. Alright, so we just got this event popping up. The death of King George V. In the last several months, King George has been plagued by illness and his death has been failing. This fact has been kept from the public to keep up appearances while treatments were attempted, but seemed all was for naught. At 11:55 p.m. yesterday, the king died, following a bout of severe fever. His eldest son and heir apparent, Prince Edward, has inherited the throne as Edward VIII, and is expected to address the nation within the month. An official coronation will take place in several months' time, after an official mourning period for King George has been observed. So, this whole thing reminded me about when King George V actually died. He said this beforehand, but anyway, he said, "After I am dead, the boy will ruin himself in 12 months. He was talking about Edward VIII, and if you know in our timeline, Edward VIII abdicated from the throne. Anyway, the empire enters a state of mourning. So it should have Edward VIII as our leader now. So let's see what it has to say about him. After the death of his father, King-Emperor George V, Edward of Windsor was crowned in a lavish ceremony in Ottawa. The young monarch, notably solemn upon his enthronement, inherited an empire undoubtedly a shadow of its former glory, and a kingdom occupied by syndicalist revolutionaries. Undeterred, King Edward maintains, above all else, the desire that the banner of the United Kingdom again proudly fly above the British Isles." Also, now that we got King Edward VIII as king, we can go with our first national focus. I'm going to go with this one, the King's Speech. Edward, Prince of Wales, will be coronated king as the Canadian political landscape consists of two main factions, one led by Liberal Prime Minister Mackenzie King, the other led by Conservative R.B. Bennett and the exiled British aristocracy. The Emperor will be awaiting his radio address after the coronation, where he will be expected to declare his government's direction. So we'll get the event the King's first address. Today, an envoy from the petty military junta of Transamore has come to visit His Majesty King Edward VIII. In his speech, the envoy informed us about King George V's previous support of Kolchak's 1925 unsuccessful coup, and Petrograd assured us that this time the rogue admiral will triumph. However, he once again requests support from the Entente. We owe Kolchak nothing, but maybe he's not that useless? How should we answer? Assure him that he'll get everything he needs? Limited support will be enough? Or he is just an old buffoon? I don't know what this does, so I guess we'll go with assure him that he'll get everything he needs. Okay, so I got two events at the same time because I joined some war between the King of Delhi, I think that's how it's pronounced, in Afghanistan. Anyway, King Edward comments on war. King Edward recently made the rounds in Canadian newspapers commenting on the war with Afghanistan and saying, "This won't be the end of it. The world order established after the end of the Great War is now falling apart, and the Empire must be ready. We cannot put our heads in the ground and wish things were other than they are. For one way or another, the wars overseas will come to our shores." The King's comments were seen as tacit, I don't know what it is, tacit support for R.B. Bennett and the Conservatives, and many Canadians are reluctantly agreeing. I see. Change your popularity social conservatism by 5%. Black Monday hits Canada. Just when we thought we were almost through the doldrums of the Great Depression, the German economic markets have experienced a massive crash, which has come to be dubbed Black Monday. While the Canadian economy isn't as tied to the German markets as some, the ripples have been felt through the world, particularly in the United States, a market we are particularly dependent upon. The setback is difficult to take, though Prime Minister King has assured the country we will make it through this, just as we have the dark years prior. Now is the time for us to join together and work as we never had before. More troubles? Bah. So, our Great Depression got worse. The King's first address. As King Edward prepares his first radio address to the Empire, he must consider what his message will be. His Privy Council is, of course, urging him to promote the cause of retaking the home isles. R.B. Bennett, the leader of the Conservative Party and the official opposition, suggests that he use his platform to endorse them for the upcoming election, saying that they will serve the cause of war far better. Others, meanwhile, suggest that supporting the current Prime Minister and government will go a long way to mending fences and maintaining stability, though it could also be considered tacit endorsement of the Liberal Party's position. I guess support the Canadian government? I'm not sure. We're also going to go with our national focus, address the army. The current Canadian army is a strange mix of national militia surrounding a corps of exiled British professionals. With war looming on the horizon, it's time to reorganize the Canadian army into a unified fighting force, taking inspiration from the legacy of the Grand British Army and her achievements in the Great War. King Edward supports the government. In his radio address, the King has spoken to the nation and has electrified it. From Vancouver to St. John, from Toronto to the Arctic Canadians, everywhere abuzz with excitement at their hearing charismatic and forceful speech celebrating Canadian progress and potential. In it, King Edward unexpectedly complimented Prime Minister Mackenzie King and the work of his government, and told Canadians that now more than ever they need to band together in their common cause against the enemies that would threaten them all. The 20th century shall be Canada's century. The House of Commons has issued the writ of elections, calling for general elections to be held in October of this year. Both the Liberals and the Conservatives have already begun campaigning, and the general sentiment is that the election will be an important one. Does the country push hard towards a confrontation with the Union of Britain, or does it take a more cautious approach and focus on building up Canada's strength and that of the other dominions? The Liberals favor the latter, while the Conservatives and the British exiles heavily favor the former. May the best party win. Chief of the Army. The time has come to select the man who will lead both the British and Canadian forces to victory on the ground. King Edward and Prime Minister Austen Chamberlain have all but noted JFC Boney Fuller with the title. Convinced his ideas on mechanizing the military is exactly the kind of ideas we need. They both seem to have forgotten, however, that the majority of lives on the line will be Canadian. Several ministers, I think it's supposed to be ministers, several ministers have pointed out that the George Vanier is more than qualified and will keep the British from throwing away Canadian lives in another Gallipoli. Okay. Well, I'm going to increase the power of the British exiles, so I guess this one. I'm going to go with this national focus next. Update the Enfield. Our guns are showing their age, and effort must be made to push the Enfield design into the modern era and beyond. So we'll get 2 times 100 We 100% research both for infantry weapons. The Moyne Commission. With recently the greatest state of the West Indies economy causing an organized labor movement within the region, this has been a cause for some concern on our part. Canadian people have always felt close to those within the West Indies Federation, due to a similar upbringing from colony to a British-led federation, increasing a desire for a formalized search into the region and its problems. This has resulted in the formation of the Moyne Commission, expected to go around to each colony within the Federation and see exactly what their problems are. Starting in the colony of Guyana, the officials in charge of this are Walter Guinness, 1st Baron Moyne is the lead, Dr. Mary Blacklock, who works in tropical medicine, Professor F. Angledow, who has expertise in agriculture, economist Hubert Henderson, Sir Percy McKinnon, who is representing Canadian financial interests, female Liberal politician Cora Taylor Castleman, noted anti-socialist trade unionist Walter Citrine, 1st Baron Citrine, and financially conservative politician Ralph Ashton. Together their objective is to investigate the problems in the West Indies starting a week from now. Let's hope our worry isn't founded. Political Power Plus 20, West Indies Federation can see Event Moyne Commission. I probably butchered a lot of those names, but anyway, that's all the time we have for this part, so bye for now.